Assists Canadian actor Shane Rimmer in one of his early film roles.
I found him terrifically approachable, very understanding, and very helpful, very quiet. The funny thing was, you'd be talking to him, and you'd notice him looking at you, like a Look magazine camera. It's just studying you, and he'd sort of shift a bit and walk around here and pick up another angle.
Keenan Wynn's brief but memorable role as a loyal but dense soldier provides a highlight of the film when Mandrake pleads with him to break into a soda machine.
Colonel, that Coca-Cola machine, I want you to shoot the lock off it. There may be some change in there.
That's private property.
During filming of Dr. Strangelove, Stanley Kubrick learns that another project with a similar theme is going into production. Although the film version of Failsafe is to be an ultra-realistic thriller, Kubrick fears that the similarities in overall plot will hurt Dr. Strangelove at the box office, especially if the rival film is released first. Kubrick is concerned because Failsafe will be a prestigious film headed by top actors including Henry Fonda and Walter Matthau. It also boasts an acclaimed director, Sidney Lumet.
We started casting. Fonda was already set, and which of course meant a big commitment in terms of money. I was set, Walter was set, and suddenly this lawsuit arrived, filed by Stanley Kubrick and Columbia Pictures.
Kubrick and Columbia try to stop production on Failsafe by claiming that the source novel had been plagiarized from Peter George's Red Alert.
The plots were vaguely similar, but totally different approach, and we handled it that way. Failsafe was much more of a melodrama.
Kubrick's strategy works. Although highly acclaimed by critics, Failsafe opens long after Strangelove to modest box office results. With their legal troubles behind them, the spirits of the cast and crew are lifted by a set visit from Cary Grant. Principal photography is completed in late spring of 1963, and Kubrick turns his sights to creating a captivating opening title sequence.
I was in Stanley's house, we were hanging around, and then he asked me, what do I think about human beings? And I say one thing about humans, that everything that they invent is very sexual. And we looked at each other, yeah, B-52 refueling, of course. He said, well, we could shoot it, I have the models. And I said, well, let me take a look at some of the stock footage. So I went around to all the stock houses, and they had tons. I cut the sequence together to give you the two planes fornicating in top of midair. And then he looked at it, and he came up with this song. It was an instrumental of Try a Little Tenderness, and we put it together. It was amazing. And we put the title over here, and we put a title over there, and then you didn't know whether to watch, the title or the background, and it looked terrible. And then I said, well, suppose I come up with another idea about making, like, produce big, the word buy big, because it looks like we have to fill the screen in order for you to see two things at once. And then Stanley looked at it. I wanted to have an assistant work my lettering over so it'd be nice and neat. He says, no, I like the way you did it. So I said, okay. After I did it, we shot it, and it worked out great, and everybody loved it, and he loved it. After 2 or 3 months the film was released, I got a phone call from Stanley, and he says, Pablo, did you know you misspelled a word? I said, what? I did. I said, yeah, based on the book. There's no D on based.
With the titles complete, the remainder of the film has to be scored. Laurie Johnson and his orchestra have to maintain a fine balance in their composition for the film.
The main purpose of the score was to try and link with one arc the drama from the first cut to the first interior of the bomber. Right up to the last one when the bombs dropped.
Target in sight. Where in hell is Major Kong?
So that every time, although comedy is being played out on the screen, each time one returns to the bomber, the audience have to feel that it's a step nearer. The tension had to mount very, very slightly and very gradually over that. And each time the audience come back, whilst they may have just been loosened up by the comedy of it, something has to tell them subconsciously that inexorably you're going towards the main event.
The climax to Dr. Strangelove turns out to be the most famous, unseen sequence in the history of motion pictures. Kubrick shoots the ultimate slapstick sequence, a cream pie fight which reduces the war room to chaos. From the beginning, it is doubtful as to whether it will be left in the final cut.
The studio had told him that early on, that we know what you're going to try to do. It's going to be one take only. And of course, since they were laughing, it was unusable, because instead of having that totally black, which would have been an amazing, like this blizzard, which in a sense is metaphorical for all the missiles that are coming as well, you just have these guys having a good old time. So, as Kubrick later said, it was a disaster of Homeric proportions.
The cream pies were flying around so thickly that people lost definition, and you couldn't really say whom you were looking at.
Kubrick opts to cut the ambitious pie fight sequence and end the film with the image of the miraculously reinvigorated Dr. Strangelove.
Mr. President, I would not rule out the chance to preserve a nucleus of human specimens.
It was a much better line to end the film on when, galvanized by his return to Nazi power and also the proposition of a lot of sex in the bunker, where the chosen leaders of the free world will be quartered after the hydrogen bomb has fallen on the rest of us, Dr. Strangelove actually rises out of his chair like Lazarus from his grave.
I have a plan. Monsieur! Has it worked?
During the final editing, we were about to dub the film, and the last reel of the film, which is the most complicated, which is the bomb run with Slim Pickens, which is hundreds of little cuts. It vanished from the labs, and it never was found. Oh, I was devastated, because it had taken months to cut. It was enormously complicated. So I had to recut the whole bloody thing in about 2 weeks from memory. And I remember Stanley did this brilliant thing of cutting up the script, and everything was put on cards on an enormous board, and we reconstituted the whole thing and started from scratch.
As Kubrick prepares to screen Dr. Strangelove for critics, he finds the film has a rendezvous with destiny. The screening date is November 22nd, 1963.
Like everything else in America, the events of November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy's assassination, moved everything, shook everything up.
We decided for obvious reasons that we better cancel the preview. Stanley was there, and Stanley readily agreed. In fact, he may have even been the first one to suggest canceling, but Stanley had a more specific reason, because unlike the rest of us, Stanley knew the dialogue.
Our president has just been assassinated, and now we're going to see the president of the United States portrayed in the film having to make momentous decisions about the future of not only his country, but of the whole world. And it was very much on everyone's mind as to how the public would react to this so soon after.
They also had to change a line in the film, which was when the pilot, Slim Pickens, is going through the content survival check, and he's saying, you know, prophylactics, lipstick, nylon stockings. Then he says, hell, a fella could have a pretty good time in Dallas with all that stuff. And of course, you look at his, he had to loop in, and the line now is Vegas.
Shoot, a fella could have a pretty good weekend in Vegas with all that stuff.
The impact of President Kennedy's assassination pushes the film's general release to late January in 1964.
You release towards the end of the year to take advantage of the acclaim, the awards, and the Oscars. But we had no choice. I mean, we had opted that it was too soon to go 3 weeks after the assassination.
Still, Kubrick initiates a highly imaginative publicity campaign.
Attack Russia.
Beginning with Pablo Farro's trailers and TV spots, cut in his own inimitable style.
As everything with Stanley, if it was cutting edge, he was very much interested in it. So just as Stanley Kubrick was cutting edge for films, Pablo Farro was considered cutting edge for television spots and movie trailers.
Kubrick also micromanages the print ad campaigns, choosing a minimalist cartoon as the central image. Concerned that the main artwork will be too avant-garde for mainstream America, the publicity department convinces Kubrick to allow an alternative ad campaign for use outside of major urban areas.
Some of us resisted just that line cartoon art and fought with Stanley to add a photographic element to the campaign, and ultimately that art was supplemented with little postage stamp inserts of each of the principal characters.
The trailer became the new frontier for trailer making, and the print ad became the new frontier for print advertising.
However, the publicity department has a nightmarish dilemma. The major stars and Kubrick are all notoriously shy about doing publicity for their films, and Strangelove is no exception.
The least likely person to be the movie star representative of the film was Slim Pickens as a personality going out to sell the movie. But of course Stanley was right, 100% right. Slim Pickens went on The Tonight Show. I was the publicist who brought him to The Tonight Show. Went on and of course killed him. Killed him with the interview that he did, and then of course showed the footage of him writing the bomb down.
Some elements of the publicity campaign are as offbeat as the film itself. One involves the use of the pocket radioactivity calculator, which Dr. Strangelove uses.
We made it available to theaters around the country. They could buy them to use, to give to their local press, to give out as contest prizes. They're a very inexpensive item, but it captured the feeling of this movie. On the one hand, these horrific circumstances that you were dealing with in this comic way.
Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, opens in the United States on January 30th, 1964.
When it opened in New York, Bosley Crowther absolutely destroyed it. And he realized some months later what an extraordinary film it was. He re-reviewed it, which I think is very seldom done for the New York Times. It was extraordinary.
The film was a critical and commercial success in New York and London. Ultimately, Dr. Strangelove turns an impressive profit on its $2 million production costs, and in February of 1965 is nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Screenplay. The legacy of Dr. Strangelove continues to endure as new generations of movie lovers are exposed to its inspired style of filmmaking. The American Film Institute has not only voted it as the #3 comedy of all time, but also ranks it 26th among the 100 most important movies ever made.
Even today, 37 years after the film was released, when they refer to the Cold War and U.S.-Russian relations, they still think in terms of Dr. Strangelove. The New York Times just recently ran a story about nuclear deterrent and missile defenses, and the picture that they used to illustrate this was the war room from Dr. Strangelove. It actually had nothing to do with the story. There's no reference to it in the story, but the photo illustrating this story was the war room. It became that much a part of the American culture.
So much a part of American culture that Stanley Kubrick's vision influences even the highest circles.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
Reagan, when he became president of the United States, asked his chief of staff to look at the war room in the White House. And the chief of staff, Mr. President, there is no such thing in the White House. And Reagan said, but I saw it in that film, Dr. Strangelove.